It doesn't take a genius to realize that Freddy Fazbear and his band of animatronic characters have become some of the most iconic video game characters in recent time. In only the past 10 years, they've had their faces plastered on just about anything you could possibly think of. They have easily surpassed being just video game characters. They've become globally recognized and loved by people of all different ages and backgrounds. And in this video, I'm going to be going over how they stand out as a group. I've already done individual videos on each character, but I wanted to kind of round off everything with a video that goes over every character working in unison. Because I genuinely do think that this group of characters is strongest as a group. And there's a lot of reasons for that and things that have happened that heavily support it. And I think the ground zero for this actually doesn't come from the original game, but rather early fan content, and how people interpreted the little snippets we get from the actual game into ways to make personality traits for each character. But I feel like something just as important is the character design, which I have less to say about, so I suppose I should talk about it before I go into the community stuff. I would say more about it, but 4 videos already. Hey, by the way, there's still like 13 of my plushies left in stock if anyone wants to get them. I'll put the link in the pinned comment and the description. Okay, that's it. I think the FNAF 1 cast really excels at having the perfect amount of characters and the perfect distinctions between the characters, but not to the point where they feel disconnected from each other. A cast of core main characters for a series should typically all look like they're distinctly from the same series, and the 4 FNAF 1 animatronics basically perfectly capture that, along with all their minimalistic color palettes that make them stand out from each other very strongly. Freddy is a rich brown, Foxy is a dark red, Bonnie is a bluish purple, and Chica is yellow. And Freddy and Bonnie, despite having the exact same bodies, still are very easily recognizable and distinguishable from each other due to their drastically different colors and head shapes being completely different. And there's also something to be said about their silhouettes. But I don't really think I have much else to say that wasn't already said in my previous videos for this topic, so I'm gonna move on to the more interesting stuff now. I think these guys have proved this point pretty well by carrying a movie that made over $300 million. I did a poll on my YouTube channel and on my Twitter, and basically all my socials I posted about it. And this was a Google form which I titled Mysterious Form, which I basically just used as a way to see how bad people's FNAF brain rot was. I did a poll full of a bunch of random animals and asked people to put in what the first fictional character they think of that is this animal is. And I also put in all of the animals that the Five Nights at Freddy's animatronics happen to be, specifically Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. And I tried to spread this poll out as far as I possibly could so it could get some pretty varied results. And most of the questions in the poll were completely useless to this video, but they were important to throw people off. Now I did put some options there that were completely irrelevant, like hedgehogs, dogs, cats, just to get people's minds thinking of multiple different series at once. But then we get to bears and foxes. These are extremely common animals to be used for fictional characters. But, of course, Freddy, Fazbear, and Foxy are very relevant to this video, so let's take a look at the results. I did not mention that this poll would be about FNAF whatsoever, and it didn't even have anything related to FNAF. I didn't post it with anything FNAF related implied, it was just, this is the poll. Now let's look at the bunnies and the chickens. Let's see how the responses are for those two. Now I can't really think of many characters who are chickens off the top of my head, but bunnies are undeniably a very popular animal to use. I mean, I'm one to talk. Case in point, these characters define entire animals for some people. And that says a lot for some of the absolute most basic animals that this series decides to make characters out of. And as a little bonus, here's iconic groups of 4 and iconic locations. Like, it is not an easy feat to have an animal that people will look at and go, oh, it's that character. Few characters are able to hold that for many people, and Freddy Fazbear in particular, have you seen all the TikToks? People on there will see any bear ever and go, Freddy Fazbear? And you know what? I think that's a beautiful thing, you know? Anybody who's born between, like, I don't know, friggin' 2006 through now will associate bears immediately with Freddy. That's awesome, I think. Anyway, didn't they mention fan content, like, forever ago? FNAF 1 lays a pretty clear foundation of what character serves which role in the band. You could very obviously assume Freddy is the leader, but you can also gather that he's probably the smartest with how he's more stealthy on the cameras. The fact she holds a cupcake and has a bit that says let's see and goes into the kitchen, you can gather that Chica really likes food. And with her facial expressions, you can gather that she's probably a little crazy. Foxy's the more shy one who likes to hide away in his cove and only comes out when you're not looking at him. And Bonnie's trait is that he's weird, and quite the opposite of shy. And these are not very, like, complex or hard to understand personalities for each member of the band, but for early internet fandoms, and internet fandoms as a whole, this is more than enough. And this leads us into the topic of how a lot of the extreme sentimental attachments people have to these characters originally sparked from fan content. Five Nights at Freddy's is a very unique type of franchise in the sense that the community created around the games can mostly be credited to its success rather than the games themselves. Now this doesn't apply nearly as much to the newer games since they're made by much larger teams, but because of how intriguing this world it introduced was, the size of these games didn't really matter that much since they did do a great job at keeping the intrigue up. Like, yes, of course FNAF 1 had a huge part in making my Foxy obsession back when I was younger. But you know what else did? Absolute visionaries like ZadgeQ37, which, honestly, they could make a whole video if I wanted to. Honestly, I probably will eventually, because this is genuinely one of the longest running pieces of FNAF fanfiction I've ever seen, and it's actually crazy. But, like, you just weren't a FNAF fan back in 2015 if you didn't at least stumble across these videos a few times. And any series similar to it. And I guarantee a lot less kids would be inclined to buy FNAF action figures if these types of things didn't exist online. Like, what did I want to do with my FNAF figures? Did I want to make them switch around on cameras that I imagine in my head? Or did I want to make Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy team up to fight Springtrap? Because I think you know the answer. Something about these characters just really made a lot of people's imaginations pop off. And I think a massive contributing factor to this is that they ride this perfect middle ground between being a complete blank slate and having just enough to where you can figure out what their personality would be. Which leads to a lot of different interpretations that different people can have for them, which leads to a lot of different creative things happening. And I think that's just the beauty of it all. Of course, there are many disadvantages to having a series that doesn't make everything clear, and FNAF has demonstrated that a lot of times. But also, if that wasn't an aspect of FNAF, these characters wouldn't have made it nearly as far as they did. Community is an essential aspect to this franchise, and I really don't think it would have existed if it wasn't for these characters being just that endearing.
So remember, these characters hold a special place in the hearts of children, and we need to show them a little respect, right? Okay.
There are so many products with these characters on them, and I am a very qualified person to talk about this, considering I have most of them. I always find a way to talk about merch in every single video I ever make ever. Ignore half of my theory video. It is quite a accomplishment how much merch that these characters have, and I think a big contributing factor of this is just how easy they are to make merch of. These are such simple designs that lend themselves very well to be shifted and mutilated into whatever the heck monstrosities they want to make. And terrible merch has become sort of a staple of the FNAF series. Everyone kind of knows that's a thing that happens with it a lot. And I think this very, unique aspect of FNAF merch is a very big contributing factor to why so many people love them so much. Because as great as it would be if every piece of FNAF merch was up to a high quality standard, Funko plushies are kind of the funniest things ever made. And there's also the obvious bootlegs that look even funnier. But these characters are very much embedded into the public conscience, mostly because of merchandising and marketing that's been associated with them. At least in the United States, I highly doubt there's many people who haven't at least seen the FNAF characters once. Because at least in my area, there's few stores that you can go into and not find them in. I feel like it's often really understated just how large the series is, and how, sort of subconsciously, these characters have become sort of iconic to generally just everybody, even if the majority of people aren't really fully acquainted with them. And I should probably specify, everybody doesn't necessarily include everybody. I mean, I don't think the 90-year-olds know who Freddy Fazbear is.
Is this bear my grandson?
Yeah, so that video was a bit on the shorter end of things, but I wanted to get the point across and have a nice little conclusion video to round everything off for this pretty long series. Because I feel like it's only fair to pay respects to the FNAF 1 gang as a group before I move on to other characters. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy have stood the test of time, and I think they'll continue to do so. So yeah, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. In the next episode of the character analysis series, I do plan on doing the puppet, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, I got other stuff in the works too, so stay tuned. Okay, goodbye.